We're back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Office Hours 19.
Whoa, Nick. So we do these hands in the thumbnails. Hit one for me. Hit one. But give me 9. Nice. We're only one away from being out of fingers.
Man, that's going to be a weird time.
These are the real problems that we have to face.
These are.
All right, Nick, who was our guest?
Our guest was Dr. Debra Lieberman. She is a professor at University of Miami, and she focuses on evolutionary psychology, studying topics such as sexuality, morality. She wrote a book, co-authored a book on disgust called Objection, and also more recently Gratitude, which was, I thought, a super fascinating topic that we covered in our conversation.
Same.
Yeah. Do you have anything that's jumping out at you right away after I gave that brief little description?
I mean, I thought the topic of disgust was pretty cool, how it's like this ingrained characteristic that people have as, you know, it kind of reminded me of that psychological immune system that we were talking about before.
Dr. Ackerman.
With Dr. Ackerman, yep. And so I thought that was a really interesting piece to that puzzle of how it's probably a natural tendency that we have that allows us to protect ourselves in a certain sense. And then it plays out in many different ways in society today. So obviously go back to the interview if you want to hear more specifically about that. But I just think that was really fascinating. And then I'm just a huge proponent of gratitude in general. I get it. Like, she didn't have to tell me. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool to like just hear her give some of the nitty gritty. What about you?
Yeah.
Anything in particular you liked?
Well, yeah, similar to you, I think the topic of disgust was like relatively similar to our conversation with
Dr. Ackerman.
Dr. Krems.
Oh, Dr. Krems too, yeah.
With talking about jealousy and how we denote jealousy as such a negative thing, but there's utility to these things that we feel. And actually, I just had to study for a huge exam, but disgust is one of the 6 basic emotions.
See, there you go.
Universal emotions too, yeah. So
do you know the other 5 off the top of your head?
There's joy, sadness, fear, surprise, disgust. Oh no, what am I forgetting?
Indifference.
I don't remember the last one. I'm brain dead. I took the exam earlier today, so if I sound
You're forgiven.
Ridiculous, Brennan's just gonna fill the space.
That's right. I have no problem talking.
Beautiful. But yes, this disgust piece was super interesting, and something I feel like we didn't talk about a lot was really like what she talked about in her book Objection a lot, was how is disgust really in like our political system and in the lawmaking decisions. Like if there are lawmakers who are, for example, seeing people from the LGBTQ community as disgusting, like, is that impacting how they set laws and make legislation when maybe it's not right?
I mean, I would say yes.
Right? It's a serious problem.
Yeah, and I would say it would be almost naive to think that it wasn't present. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I don't think it's, again, this is what I say all the time, it's just another thing that doesn't get named. And so we blanket these things and think like, oh, that's just wrong.
Well, I think it kind of falls into the idea that, you know, again, to reference another podcast, it falls into that idea of algorithm bias.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the system at play is promoting the ideals of a specific generation because those people in that generation have risen to prominence and are now holding on to that level in the system. Mm. So while there is a majority who may share a common value, it's going to be time before there's enough people to make that change.
Is that always the case? Like, is there always a cycle of the generation who's rising up, who's now in the power positions, which is like the baby boomers now, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Now they use their control and they tell you what they want, and they have more of like a greater impact on what society is, and then that torch gets passed down and things change, or do they stay the same? Like, do you think that that's always just...
Yeah, I would say that there are probably some things that do fall into, like, my main thought is that that's always the case, right? Like, there's always things that the younger generations and the older generations are at odds over, and it's just a matter of time before those people in certain generations have phased out of the positions that allow them to dictate some of the policy, and therefore the younger generation and the ideals that make up that generation can take over. But then that generation has kids, and then there's a new generation to contend with these new ideas that have been put into place. So it's a bit of a never-ending cycle. You know, what I think is a optimistic outlook is that the overarching moral outlook, like moral view of a lot of people, I think tends to be pretty consistent and good. So the hope is that we're constantly moving in a forward direction to get to a place that's always better than it was. And I think to a certain degree, I'm by no means going to say things are perfect, but like all in all, you could look back at a lot of the years in the past. This is undoubtedly one of the best times to be alive. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, you go back far enough, they didn't have sewage. Like, I was hearing a story today. Like, the people, so back in, I want to say it was like the 1920s. Like, I could be way off on this date here, but they were noticing that women were dying during labor like crazy, and they couldn't identify what it was. And out of the blue, a doctor had his assistants wash their hands before they went.
Oh, yeah.
And that moment led to this discovery that people needed to wash their hands. But what doesn't really get talked about in that is he was criticized for having thought that washing the hands was the solution. This was not immediately adopted. He was actually put into a mental institution because of this thought, because he was so adamant that washing the hands and microbacteria could have, and I think if I remember correctly, he ended up dying in this mental institution.
Oh man.
So like, these are the types of things where it's really great to just be able to like work through thoughts and ideas. And people love to have their assumptions and jump to conclusions and think that they know everything. And when you think you know everything, you can't learn anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot going on, but yeah, I think in general, it's a theme that tends to just like recur with different topics as the subject.
All right. Here's another question. So generalization, fair warning, but like, we've talked about before, it seems like in our experience, at least, maybe this generation of parents, of like our parents, really grew up in a time to where maybe they experienced a lot of struggles. There was like the depression that their parents saw, so this passed down from them. But they didn't want their kids to struggle, right? They want to kind of prevent that. And we see the effects from that. And it's challenging and it's difficult. What do you anticipate some of the challenges that parents maybe in their 30s now are facing or will be facing?
Or what challenges are the parents going to face
in raising children?
As in, what are they? Okay, so what challenges are the children, or what things that the parents went through are the kids not going to benefit from having the same thing?
Yeah. Maybe what are things that we don't know about that we're going to pass down to our children? Can you name them?
That we're not thinking about maybe? Or
that would be beautifully insightful.
I would like to think that there's a bit of a cyclical pattern here. And my hope is that in a way we come full circle and the next generation, I hate to think that because what you alluded to, right, is the generations before our parents or our parents' parents, they had wars, and there was a whole different level of difficulty that came out of that. I hope that that's not the answer, but I think there is going to be some degree of like responsibility and accountability that's thrust on the next generation without them wanting it, and they're going to have to step up and like resolve this. It could be climate change, it could be any number of things. Social media and having to tackle the social media problem. I mean, parents now are like in the middle of having to navigate that. And I think unfairly are being, it's hard to know you're in the middle of something that's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. So being a parent now and having to navigate the social media thing, like you don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult. So I think the next generation of parents, and as we like develop, I think it will be interesting to see how some parents decide to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to be an experiment in itself, and some people are going to get it right, some people are going to get it wrong. But I don't know. I mean, a part of me also wants to say that the current generation of kids and parents also, like, you being somebody who's studying psychology, and obviously like we haven't evolved so much to the degree that like what our needs as humans are different than they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why would the assumption be that it's any different now? So I guess my point there is, I think the things that we needed and that kids need from the past, like, I think they need them still. I think there's a value in discipline and structure. I think structure is maybe where I'm getting at. I feel like the free flowing of information and accessibility to everything and the overwhelm that comes from having accessibility to everything really can, I think, make youth development feel very structureless. I don't think school provides adequate structure. So I think there's something there about like routine structure, and like it's like training a dog. They love routine.
Oh man, yeah.
When you can't think for yourself because you're not ready to go out into the world by yourself, routine is something you can rely on.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a sorely missed thing that I think a lot of the past generations, you come down from a family who was built on having some kind of military experience because so many people did. Like routine just gets ingrained in that generation, but then they loosen and they loosen and they loosen. And now we have like these routineless run amok type, childhood experiences that people are having that probably don't lend themselves to like a very well-formed identity in a way.
Mm-hmm. I think, so I'm going to add to that, and I know that you'll be able to riff on what I'm going to add to it.
Send it.
But that's going to come in a second, because I think some of the maybe things that I think about, and maybe some bit of anxiety that I have, is this piece going back to like ignorance is bliss to a certain extent, but it's not. So with growing childhood education, learning more about how to, what we think like properly raise a child and their development, like there's so much like that a parent should know.
There's an overwhelming amount of things that you would want to know as like heading into parenthood that you will never know.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And it's stressful. Like that's a lot. And I think that's where I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's like, oh God, are you doing this right? Am I doing this right? Like what is happening? And I think that's where maybe in the past it's been beneficial for parents to be like, yeah, like I don't really know, but I think I'm doing this right. And then some kids turn out okay. Some kids do not get the proper love and care, right? So it's definitely that the more information is the better.
Right.
But I think there's some anxiety that comes along with that. So that's a little personal thing, but you added this structureless component. Oh God, Brendan. What is remote work doing to us with structure?
Oh God.
What is it doing?
Well, one of the things that we just were tossing around before we started this is that we've got this generation of kids who have already been kind of pegged as a highly entitled generation. And now we've allowed them for over a year to work from home and just have the absolute most relaxed structure or lack of structure, the typical structure of being a working professional, and the things that come along with that are gone. And have we overly encouraged in a negative way this like free flowing lack of structure? And like, let's talk for a second about like why structure could be important.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think something that's like very often like misunderstood or misinterpreted, and I'm just going to be giving my opinion here, so like feel free to like, you know, rock the foundation of this to see if it falls apart. But one of the things that people need, in my opinion, again, is like they need to see and develop themselves into a better version of themselves than they used to be. I think that's a pretty safe guess. You
Get
know,
better every day.
yeah. And I think there's like, so that like process of growth is a lot better achieved when there's a structure to help you push in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And when people can like organize themselves in a way that helps move them towards a higher ideal of themselves and grow into what they think they could achieve, or what the people around them like are pushing them to try and achieve, there's a level of self-belief, confidence. Like there's a lot of foundational emotions, I think, that are bolstered through that process of like you gain confidence in yourself. Like you kind of figure out who's in your corner and who's supportive of you. And I think there's in this process of removing the structure, allowing people to like navigate through life with like all of these options. They don't know what they want to do. We've got this crisis of people who like don't know what their passion is, and they feel like they've got to go find their passion. You just like, and I think that this is a sentiment that gets attempted to be utilized in this context, but is often missed. And that is like, you just need to start. You know what I mean? Like the point is to have an aim, not to be aiming at the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because through the process of, you know, I really like this idea of when you decide, I'm going to use the example of very intentionally of an archer, because like taking aim, it's like a very fitting description.
Mm-hmm.
When you decide that you want to be an archer, your goal as an archer is to take your bow and your arrow and shoot the arrow at the target. And this is also a metaphor for life. When you're in that process, the target becomes a judge. It judges you. It tells you whether you're hitting the target or not. And in doing so, you can alter your aim. So but you have to keep shooting. You can't stop shooting. Otherwise, you're not going to continue to progress and become better.
Yeah. And then you'll get that one lucky one. And then
yeah. And it'll be
somebody
deceptive.
hitting the lottery.
Yeah. But my point is, I think a lot of people get caught up in this idea of like having to find your passion. And I agree, like you've got to have your outlets and your ability to express your personality in the way that fits best for you. But what is often not considered is the idea that if you pick a target and you attempt to shoot at it and you refine your aim to the point where you get really good, you may find out that there's a second target, and that second target may be a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to hit that target either.
Well, you're now better able to aim.
Correct.
Right? Like, yeah.
Because you've been able to navigate one target, you are then like you said, better able to address the things that are going to confront you when having to compensate for this new target. So it's and you can always pick new targets. But the point is the process of developing yourself and refining one's self towards a more ideal version of themselves, reaching out for those targets, is a critical, in my opinion, piece of developing as a human being. And I think a lack of structure and all of this, like, it's really aimless entitlement that becomes a really destructive problem. When you're pretending like you need things and you're entitled to things, and you haven't done any of the prerequisite things to be able to demand those things you feel entitled to, you're a fraud and you have no identity, right? Like there's no, but like really,
Yeah.
like, and like those are classic, like, psychological disruptions.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's like a huge issue with this whole current culture and like lack of structure. And like the younger generations are going to pay the price for that.
Yeah, and we're not saying that all remote work is bad, because there's an opportunity that if the person really instills structure in their life while working from home still, and is very productive, and like
Yeah,
you're taking
it's not an
advantage of your
absolute.
time, it's great. But yeah, I definitely think that there has been this talk of like people want to get their employees back into the office, and then you get these other people saying like, why would you ever want to do that? Like remote work's been great, it's been working well. And it's like, well, I don't think there has to be either or. Like it can
Right.
be that, okay, maybe some people are doing well, but some people are, yeah, this is not working out okay.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is like this entitlement creates this mindset for younger people to say like, I'm working from home now, like I want to keep doing that, like I deserve to continue to work from home the way I want. And
Yeah.
like, on what planet does anybody think that they have the ability to like tell their employer what they should or should not be doing? Like, no, you're an employee of this company. You work for them. They don't work for you. Like, and that's actually something, like, I know a lot of people like get all bent out of shape about capitalism and all that stuff, but like the beauty of capitalism is you can go work somewhere else, you know? And like,
You can work for yourself.
you can work for
if you
yourself. I don't think you should settle, but I don't think you should have the audacity to think that you can make an employer bend to your will and do whatever you want. Like, man, that struggles with me too, because when you, especially this younger generation that we're talking about, when you're, 25 and under, let's call it, and you're a brand new employee or whatever, like, and you want to try and like reform the culture and create the demands, like, I'm sorry, you've done what? Where are you going to be providing value to this? And I'm not talking dollars, but you need to, like, if you want to have the ability to make an audacious demand of your employer, you better provide some audacious value to that employer. So, and if you don't like, and if there's something fundamentally wrong about the company, I'm on board with just leaving.
Yeah, and
You
saying,
can't
"This isn't for me."
can't change a company culture that's just like absolutely
Right, yeah.
been destroyed. But if, for like, to use an example, if you have an employer who's wanting you to go back into the office and you don't want to, and you want to make demands so that you can continue to work from home and be remote, like, I'm sorry, you just don't have the value in the company yet to make that kind of a demand. Like,
Yeah, if
You're
you
not
did
there.
have the value, then yeah, maybe you
Yeah.
could converse about it and
Right.
say like, hey, this is
yeah,
what I think would be best because I've been very effective. But
right.
yeah, I mean, it's
And
like you can't just go back to this absolute of like it worked for maybe this year, like it's going to work forever now. Like that might not be
Right.
the case too.
there's a dialogue that has to happen, right? What about 2 days a week you get to be home?
Yeah.
That sounds really reasonable. And most reasonable companies will listen to reasonable people.
Man, Mondays, Fridays at home.
I mean, shoot, 3 days, middle of the week, no one's doing anything anyway.
Damn.
You get a little Taco Tuesday, a little for Nick Wasted Wednesday.
Oh my gosh.
And then a little Thirsty Thursday.
Funky Fridays
And then
at home.
Mondays and Fridays, you're just home in your PJs.
Oh my gosh.
That's the dream. But yeah, I think we've got a real issue to be aware of with, I think, some of the current generations who are finding themselves in another position to try and take advantage of their position.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conflict because I've spoken with some people who, like some family friends who run like a small business, and they're experiencing this pushback from, they want to have their employees back in office, and they're noticing that the younger employees who are more so in their 20s are saying, hey, like, I moved. Like, I need to still work remotely. And
Yeah.
it's like, wait, what? No, like, we think that building relationships and networking is the best way to go about this. And from our knowledge, because we've never really done remote until now, like, we think this is the best way. And I think they definitely need to hear them out. And also still consider the remote work. Like, yes, there's a huge value. I could probably connect with a new contact that's across the nation. That's great. But don't get me wrong, like, you should probably listen to what your employer is saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The unfortunate reality is when you're the younger generation and there's business owners or business, whatever, like, they make the rules.
Yeah.
So
If you want to start your own company, I guess so be it, right?
yeah. Or find a smaller local company who's willing to give you the flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't. Yeah. It's a.
This like entitlement that you're going to get all of the things
Mm-hmm.
is just, it's where it goes too far.
It does. So remote work, net positive.
To be determined.
Stay tuned for next office hours.
Yeah. For real.
So gratitude, Brendan. I loved that portion of the conversation.
What was your favorite part? Hit me.
So I said this in the conversation, but I feel like gratitude only gets talked about meaning that we need to be grateful for things that are in our lives and where we're at in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we need to express gratitude. But we don't talk about the effects of us expressing gratitude and how that affects other people. And that's what she really hit on, was like, if I am grateful for you bringing me a cup of coffee,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's just really nice. If you would have brought it to me and I would have said sick and like not even cared,
Yeah.
then it would have been like, okay, that probably doesn't motivate you to do something kind again.
Right.
Like, you'd probably be like, okay, screw this guy, he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm like, dude, Brennan, this cup of coffee, I needed this so much, thank you so much, like, that was so kind of you, like, I'm honored that you went out of your way to do that for me. Like, it's, wow, you're such a great guy. Now you're probably like, I feel pretty good, that was a good thing I did, I should probably go do more good things.
Yep.
That is a beautiful cycle that we don't take advantage of enough.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the common, like, knowing of, what am I saying? It's the thing that is like commonly thrown around is like, you pay for the person's coffee behind you and they don't know.
Yeah.
And then you see if that trend can get going. I was in one in a Starbucks one time, like,
well,
20 people.
The one down the road from here went wild one day.
Really?
Yeah. Like 15 deep.
Oh, I was at like 20 deep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was silly. Maybe I was involved in that.
Like, you could have been. I could have been right before you.
But there was one instance to where this person just had a gift card and, they were like, I never get coffee. I just came here because I had this gift card. Like, let me get your coffee. And I was like, look at you. Like, you're doing great stuff in this world. Thank you so much.
Like, did you see what happened recently with Shaq?
No.
He was just in like a Best Buy or something. And he saw, he literally made a comment after that he like goes into like electronic stores and stuff. He sees like mothers like struggling to buy computers for school for their kids
Oh,
and stuff. Like during the pandemic, everybody was home. You had to have a computer.
yeah.
And like these people were struggling to pay for it, and he just bought them.
I love Shaq.
Yeah.
He's such a good.
Yeah, the big Aristotle.
He's a DJ, a sportscaster, one of the best centers of all time. Superman.
Philanthropist, businessman.
Like,
Yeah.
wow. Good for him.
Yeah. But no, it's like this idea of paying it forward is like a really powerful like proposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it goes back to this like karma thing. Like it's literally, and like this is something that Gary Vee says. It's practical to practice good karma. Because it's like, what you think it's just magically like if you start doing a lot of good things, you're constantly thinking about good things being done for people, that like the smallest thing isn't going to come up in your life and you're going to be like, wow, that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you said, it's this repetitive cycle. So like, yeah, I mean,
Man.
like there's no downside. And this is something that comes up a lot in, you know, I was telling you before I've been listening to like this lecture series on, the biblical stories and like the psychological significance of the biblical stories.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and it's done by Jordan Peterson, and one of the things he says constantly is the messages, you know, the attempt of religion in some sense is to answer a lot of the unanswerable questions, you know, like with unanswerable things, you know, so it's a very interesting dynamic. But when you look at it from this perspective he was taking and like this psychological significance, it's like what we're talking about right now, this like idea of being gracious for things and like paying it forward and doing all of that. It's like, yeah, because like what other choice is there?
Yeah.
If you don't, you're literally living in a pessimistic, negative, like downward spiral of like, and what he says is like that's the embodiment of living in hell. Like, and that's the psychological significance of when you don't listen to the goodness in you, which is, you know, the good and evil, you know, when you decide to do the thing or listen to the negative, you create hell on earth for yourself. And by pursuing and living out the goodness that's within you, and everybody has it, and when you live that out, you completely project that into your own life.
Literally God.
Yeah. And it's like he uses the Cain and Abel story to like talk about this.
Explain.
So the idea is that like you, like the Cain and Abel story, and I always mix up like what happened to Cain and what happened to Abel, like which was which. So I'm going to mix those up. But the basis of the story is, I think I have that down. But the idea is Cain and Abel are brothers, and they're both living their life, you know, making their sacrifices and doing things in service of God, let's say. And there's a day where God looks more favorably on
Abel, I think.
Abel. Okay. Looks more favorably on Abel for something. And it's intentionally very vague in the story what Cain has done. You know, Cain doesn't know why God's looking more favorably upon his brother than him. And so Cain, in his rage and jealousy, kills Abel. And the punishment that God's like, where's your brother? Like, and he's like, what happened to him? And he lies. And then God says that he basically banishes him and says that like, you're going to carry the burden of this for your entire life.
Oh my God.
And like, and nobody will do to you what you did to your brother. Like, he's basically saying, I'm condemning you to go out into the world and to live with the weight of this on your shoulders forever.
Yeah. Here's the guilt.
And it's a very it's like both like very symbolic in the sense of like the guilt that you carry, but it's even more deeply symbolic in the sense that you are both Cain and Abel. It's that internal struggle that everybody goes through with doing the right and the wrong thing. And the message is, when you let the wrong thing overtake the positive thing, the consequences for doing so are that you have to now carry on through life in a condemned state, like having to carry the burdens that you've brought upon yourself.
Wow, yeah.
So psychologically, when you betray your conscience like that, when you do things negative on purpose, and you have to live and carry that, it's an extremely emotionally sorrowful place to be.
Man,
and that's what we're talking about with gratitude, right? Like the assumption would be that Abel was out there doing the right things. We don't know though. And that's the thing, is we don't always know why maybe somebody else, or why the goodness is speaking so strongly in a moment. We don't understand, because you don't have an explanation for your consciousness and where that moral, your moral being is pulling you in a certain direction to do one thing, but you should listen to it, because that's the goodness, and you will be looked favorably upon if you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's like those are really interesting frameworks to think about, especially like as we were talking about with gratitude, of like it's a framework for just like being a happy person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like just having a positive outlook is to do the best thing you possibly can out into the world. Take an aim of being the best person you can be, like we were talking about before, and the best possible things will happen. You're going to invite the best of others out and like to come to you as well.
Yeah, man. If Cain was just sitting with us while we were talking to Dr. Krems so that she could explain the jealousy that he was feeling.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we could help him work through it.
We could have.
He could just see that like he just cares about God's love so much that that's why he went to this really dark place.
Yeah.
If he could just had a conversation.
Shoot.
Maybe
he needs a podcast.
Maybe he does need a podcast. But this is so true too. It's something I saw on Next Big Idea Club on their Instagram, which I shared on one of our stories a couple days ago, was there was a book quote that they shared that said, like, a healthy lifestyle requires optimism, like an optimistic outlook. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And then I thought about it, I was like, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that is so true. And it can't get understated. Like no matter what happens, if you're pessimistic, it's going to feel terrible. Mm-hmm. Like no matter what, you just have to be optimistic, I guess.
Right. It's that idea of like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Like to be living in negativity is a negative place to be.
Yeah. And it's completely different for a lot of people going through a lot of different challenges, and that's why people who are
the human
doing
experience isn't explainable in one small facet like this.
And I think that's kind of my belief about the meaning of life, is like to support each other through growth. Like if somebody's really struggling and suffering, there's people who are doing okay who can step in and help them to get to a point to where they're doing okay too. I think that's what I've come to believe is a really significant part of life.
I'm going to take that one step further and say that the meaning may be to assist. It may not be about having an aim, but to be living a life where you're helping other people achieve theirs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like the whole archery thing, like helping somebody else reach their goals. So you have to have one, because you also have to be a willing participant in the receiving of assistance on your aim.
Yeah.
You have to be active on both sides of it.
Yeah. Or else.
So you can't be aimless yourself.
Yes. Because that's just not putting on your oxygen mask and putting on somebody else's.
Yeah. Or your regular mask.
I mean, yeah, that's very relevant to today. Brennan, we'll end shortly. I know we've been going for about 40 minutes now. This has been strange to like go inside places without masks.
It has been. I don't think I have yet.
I've done it a couple times.
I've been going into a lot of, just like, I don't know. I'm just waiting it out, you know. Just
same.
But it is weird to just be out and seeing people without masks on.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
I don't know what to feel.
I don't know either.
And should I feel safe? I mean, you were dropping some knowledge on me right before.
Don't get us. Don't get YouTube to take our account down.
Man, I can't.
The censorship is real out there.
Once we just like hit 1 billion followers, then maybe they'll look at us.
Rise above censorship.
Yeah.
You know Brett Weinstein? This
Yeah.
might get us canceled. I don't know.
Yeah.
But his account got taken down.
It did?
Yeah.
His podcast?
He had a few
or what?
episodes of his podcast got taken down.
For what was the reason? What was he discussing?
It was just all around COVID.
Wow. And he was just saying stuff that maybe the CDC wasn't publicizing at the time?
Yeah, probably was just generally against the like mainstream narrative, I would say.
Yeah, he challenged some thoughts, and so
Yeah. The powers that be didn't like that.
got X'd.
So they made sure he was quiet.
See ya.
Yeah.
Strange
But he was
times
on Joe Rogan.
recently?
Yeah.
Oh.
Dude, he's shaking things up. Joe Rogan. I mean, geez, like, I love it because I love to see, like, I'm just, the whole purpose of this podcast is like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So the idea of censorship at all is just like really disgusting to me, talking them back to like this whole idea of disgust that we had in our last podcast.
Nice.
It's really disgusting to see just like a conversation being shut down because it doesn't go against the mainstream messaging that's being put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and let me just go off on this little tangent. Like the absolute most mismanaged, right? Like how many different mask protocols did we get? We're hearing like, the origins of the virus, like all different types of stories are coming out. I'm not going to talk about any in particular just to like keep it pretty,
it's tricky. Yeah.
just to keep it high level.
Yeah.
But like, there's been some substantial information like this whole last year and a half. Like we just managed it like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. What happened?
And like, to be honest, I'm not even super concerned with what happened. My issue is for it to have been an absolute disaster in multiple ways, to then quiet somebody who wants to have a conversation about it because it doesn't go against, like, if you're quieting somebody who's having a conversation to say like, hey, maybe this is wrong, from an powers that be who have clearly on various accounts gotten it wrong this whole time, that seems like a very backwards, like anti-scientific way of taking this approach. Like, don't we want to like get all possible hypotheses, weigh them out, and like proceed with?
Yeah, it's anti-progressive just in general.
Yeah, so like this, just everything going on right now is really weird.
It is.
So I don't really know how to take it, but I don't want to get too much more into it than that.
Pretty soon it might just be me here. You might get canceled yourself.
That's right. I'm gonna get abducted.
I'll just be talking to a blank chair.
Yeah. No, but it's just been a really weird, like the amount of misinformation and disinformation that have occurred.
Dude,
misinformation is wrong information. Disinformation is intentionally deceptive information. There's been a lot of both.
Yes. I always thought about this when I was little. Like, so I thought a lot about like space travel and how there was the space race and there's wars and we're up against all these different countries. And when I was young, I was just like, why the hell are we not collaborating? Like, we would be, I feel like, so much more advanced if we were able to collaborate with these other countries in a very useful, practical way to where we, like, why aren't we doing this with all people right now? Like, why is there so much hate? It's so sad.
Follow the money.
The money, man.
It's for real.
It is. It's really sad.
Yeah.
because it just seemed like it was so basic. And of course, that's when I was a very young, innocent child. But I was like, why? Why are we not collaborating on these things to really progress them?
Yeah.
And why are we competing against each other? Like, I know that there's...
Especially in a time like this.
Yes.
You would think
that the world would have came together for something like this. But it... Like, I know, yes, help people with vaccines here. Like, we're producing the vaccines. But there are so many people who just don't have access to vaccines still. And it's like, oh my God, like, what is happening? I mean, we can talk about this with everything. Oh, yeah. Right? Like,
and don't even get me, like, I don't even know that I really like have the emotional energy to get into it.
No, yeah, we're done
because
here.
it gets me riled.
We're done here. We're done.
Yeah. I'm just going to leave it at come hell or high water. I'll tell you what is going to happen. And that's the pharmaceutical companies are going to get their money.
Oh, man. Yeah. What are we going to do about that?
I mean, probably nothing.
Let's start a petition.
I see where your head's at. I'm going to have to deny it right there. I'm going to stop you right there.
I just wanted to say that. I don't even know what it would be about.
Yeah. I'm going to petition to have you not fill out this petition.
I'm going to be canceled. All right. Office Hours 19. Thanks for joining us. Brennan, last words?
Boom.
Boom. Stay tuned for the next episode. We are actually going to be doing something a little bit different to where we're going to be having 2 guests on instead of just 1. Ooh, yep, it's happening. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Peace.